The story begins with a young man named Grisha, the spoiled son of Russia's wealthiest tycoon, Gustav. Grisha's arrogance and entitlement are as lavish as his lifestyle. One evening, he visits an upscale club and becomes infatuated with a girl there. Determined to impress her, he flaunts his wealth, showering her with attention. Later, Grisha invites her into his car, assuming his charm and money are enough to win her over. But when he crudely demands she undress and she refuses, he kicks her out of the car in anger and drives off recklessly into the night. While speeding through the streets, Grisha is pulled over by a police officer. Rather than comply, he arrogantly throws a wad of cash in the officer's face and tries to intimidate him. When the officer stands firm and refuses the bribe, Grisha's fury escalates. He drives his car forward, hitting the officer, and speeds away, even taking his car up a set of stairs to escape. The next day, Gustav arrives at the police station, summoned to deal with the fallout of his son's actions. The officer recounts the events of the previous night, warning Gustav that Grisha's behavior is spiraling out of control. Meanwhile, in the lockup, Grisha lounges without a care in the world, demanding alcohol and even asking for entertainment. Gustav bails him out but scolds him furiously. Yet Grisha remains unfazed, knowing full well that as an only child, he holds an untouchable position in his father's life. Frustrated and desperate, Gustav decides it's time for drastic measures. Gustav meets with his friend Nasty, a dance director, and together they approach John, a filmmaker known for his horror movies. Gustav explains his predicament and begs for their help in reforming Grisha. They devise an elaborate plan to teach him a lesson he'll never forget. Later that night, Grisha notices someone towing away his luxury car. Furious, he chases after it, only to be struck by a tranquilizer dart. He collapses on the spot. When he wakes up, he finds himself in an unfamiliar rural setting, dressed in plain, worn clothes. A gruff man splashes water on his face and barks orders about preparing a horse. Confused and disoriented, Grisha initially assumes it's all a drunken misunderstanding. He demands his phone, only to be thrown out of the stable by another worker who mocks his arrogance. Grisha threatens the man, promising consequences, but no one takes him seriously. Soon, the village's stern owner arrives and orders his son, Max, to punish Grisha for neglecting his duties. Grisha is whipped across the back and warned to complete his tasks before the owner's tea is finished. Stripped of his privileges and trapped in this harsh, unforgiving environment, Grisha begins to realize that his wealth and power mean nothing here. He's left with no choice but to face the consequences of his actions and confront the kind of person he's become. Billy looks at Grisha, confused. "I have no idea what you're talking about," he says. Frustrated, Grisha begins running around, shouting for someone to call the police. But the villagers look at him blankly. They don't even seem to know what the police are. Billy hands Grisha some clothes, but Grisha recoils. "Where are my clothes? What is this place? How are these people even living here? No phones, no tech. This is the 21st century." Billy shakes his head. "The year is 1860, he replies. Grisha's disbelief turns to panic as he's caught and taken to the village square, where he's sentenced to be hanged alongside other prisoners. At first, he convinces himself it must be a dream. But when the noose tightens around his neck, the reality hits him hard. This is no dream. Just as his fate seems sealed, a striking young woman, Natasha, intervenes. She's the daughter of the village owner and Max's sister. "Father, please," she pleads. "Not today. It's my birthday, and I don't want anyone to die on this day." Her wish is granted, and the executions are postponed. Billy falls at Natasha's feet, thanking her profusely, but Grisha, shaken and silent, just stares at her. As the camera pans skyward, an eagle soars overhead, or so it seems. In reality, it's a drone. This is no time travel scenario. Grisha hasn't gone back to 1860 at all. His father, Gustav, orchestrated the entire setup as an elaborate lesson. The village is a meticulously designed film set, filled with actors playing their parts. Hidden cameras and microphones capture Grisha's every move. Unaware of the truth, Grisha rambles to Billy about his time travel theory. "The night I hit that car, it wasn't a car. It was a time machine. It sent me here to 1860. If I want to get back, I need to find it again." Billy, unsure how to respond, stays silent. His script doesn't cover time machines. Meanwhile, Grisha grows increasingly restless. He can't sleep on the scratchy grass beds. He's fed nothing but bland khichdi, and the lash marks on his back throb with pain. Back in the control room, Gustav watches anxiously with John, the mastermind of the plan. Now we wait to see if he changes, John assures him. One day, while resting in a field, Grisha hears sobbing nearby. He follows the sound to find Natasha crying. My father's arranged my marriage to an old, wealthy man, she explains between sobs. Grisha's response is as tone-deaf as ever. That's great. He'll die soon, and you'll inherit everything. Later, unable to resist his cravings, Grisha steals a chicken from the village owner's farm and devours it. When Billy asks for a share, Grisha coldly replies, "It's already gone." The theft doesn't go unnoticed. The villagers begin interrogating one another to find the culprit, warning that someone will be punished if the thief isn't revealed. Grisha watches indifferently, unmoved by their plight. Billy, covered in makeup wounds from the lashings, shows them off to Grisha, but his complaints are ignored. At that moment, a woman named Mary arrives on horseback. As she dismounts, her modern underwear, hidden beneath her period costume, accidentally becomes visible. Grisha, recognizing the style from his own era, is intrigued. He approaches Mary, bombarding her with questions. "Where did you get those panties? They're just like the ones we wear in my time." His curiosity quickly turns inappropriate as he tries to inspect them, prompting Mary to scream and flee. In the control room, Gustav fumes. "I spent a fortune on this plan, and it's made no difference. My son is still the same arrogant, selfish man." John remains optimistic. "Just a few more days. Trust me, we're getting through to him." Grisha, feeling guilty for his behavior toward Mary, visits her home. "I'm sorry," he says. "I was wrong to treat you that way. Please forgive me." Mary hesitates but accepts his apology. In the studio, the team watching the live feed cheers. Grisha's transformation has begun. Days pass and Grisha starts showing signs of humility. But the biggest test looms. The day Natasha is to marry the wealthy old man. The village was buzzing with celebration, everyone dancing and laughing. But Natasha approached Grisha, her face clouded with sadness. "I can't marry that old man," she said quietly. "I was going to throw myself into the river and end it all." With that, she turned and walked to the riverbank, standing at the edge as though ready to leap. Grisha barely reacted. Instead, he turned his attention to Mary and began explaining life in the 21st century. "Where I'm from," he said, "people talk to each other from miles away using little plastic boxes, and enormous metal birds soar through the sky." Billy arrived moments later, looking frantic. "Natasha's missing," he said. "Have you seen her?" When Grisha shrugged, Billy reminded him of her words and urged him to check the river. Begrudgingly, Grisha ran to the riverbank, where Natasha spotted him coming and began acting as though she were drowning. Grisha leaped into the water and pulled her out, carrying her back to her house. Natasha, grateful but manipulative, tried to get closer to him, but Grisha brushed her off. His heart, it seemed, was now set on Mary. Changing into fresh clothes, he made his way to Mary's home. The team monitoring Grisha informed Mary of his approach, prompting her to step outside in her village attire. When Grisha asked her to go for a walk, she hesitated. "My father isn't well," she said, "so I can't leave him alone." Though it was part of her script, Mary's words carried genuine warmth. Her role as Grisha's girlfriend was beginning to blur into something more real. This, however, upset Max, who had been Mary's actual boyfriend. Seeing her grow close to Grisha made him bitter. Seeking solace, Max found Natasha, and the two shared an intimate moment in the stable. As fate would have it, Grisha and Mary walked past the stable and caught Max and Natasha in the act. Mary stormed off, furious, while the crew intervened, scolding the pair for breaking character. "You're supposed to be siblings on set," they barked, before kicking Max and Natasha off the project. That night, Grisha and Mary talked, their conversation leading to a tender kiss. Meanwhile, Natasha, now disgruntled, leaked a fabricated story to the media, claiming that Grisha, the son of Russia's wealthiest man, had been kidnapped and was being tortured. The story caught fire, and the police launched a full-scale search for him. Gustav saw the chaos unfold on television and demanded that the experiment be stopped, but John reassured him. "The police will take a few days to get here," he said. "We can wrap this up before then." The next day, a group of actors dressed as Mongolian raiders stormed the village. Their leader demanded 2 young women to marry. When the village chief resisted, a staged fight ensued, ending with the chief's fake death. The raiders set their sights on Mary and began dragging her away. The villagers looked to Grisha to save her, but he froze, overwhelmed by fear. As Mary screamed his name, he fled the scene, leaving everyone, including the crew, stunned. This wasn't in the script. Moments later, Grisha returned on horseback, having mustered his courage. He fought off the raiders, rescuing Mary in a dramatic sequence. The two fled the village on the horse, only to stumble upon a petrol pump. Grisha, confused, muttered, "Where did a petrol station come from in 1860? Before he could piece it together, an actor fired a tranquilizer dart at him. Grisha collapsed, and when he awoke, he was in a hospital room. Gustav stood by his side. "You were in an accident," he explained. "You've been in a coma for 3 months." The truth unraveled when Grisha later ran into Natasha and Max at a club. They told him everything: the village, the Mongols, the time travel story, had been part of an elaborate scheme by his father to reform him. It worked. Grisha had changed. Grateful, Grisha found Mary and confessed his love. She smiled and said, "I missed you too." They kissed, sealing their connection. The film ended on a joyful note at Gustav's wedding to Nasty. Grisha congratulated his father and thanked him, acknowledging the lesson that transformed him into a better, more responsible man. And with that, the story came to a close.